Hi, welcome to the Relationship Restaurant. This is Poppy and Jeff Spencer here with podcast number 30 on the Relationship Restaurant, where we always talk about heart-healthy communication. And today we are so grateful to have an honored guest, Dr. Gary Chapman. You know his name. It's a household name, the author and creator of The Love Languages.
We're thrilled to have you, sir, and we're so grateful you could speak about your very important language that you've taught worldwide audiences, all of us, your love languages, of course, and your work has inspired and healed millions upon millions of relationships, and we thank you for your wonderful work.
Thank you, Jeff and Poppy. Great to be with you all.
So we have to applaud you a little bit on your background.
Dr. Chapman is an author, speaker, pastor, and counselor, has a passion for people and for helping them build lasting relationships. He is an internationally recognized marriage counselor and director of marriage seminars.
And as we both know, and many of our listeners already know, The 5 Love Languages is one of the most popular titles that Dr. Chapman has created. It has been translated into 50 languages and has sold more than 11 million copies worldwide. And the book ranks as the #1 best-selling self-help title in the United States, selling more than 11 million copies. Oh my gosh. Dr. Chapman was a family counselor in private practice for 40 years. I'm sure you received plenty of experience and knowledge and wisdom from that. And your nationally syndicated radio program is on air for more than 400 stations. What we really resonated with us, Dr. Chapman, is you said, no single area of marriage affects the rest of marriage as much as meeting the emotional need for love. And with that, we're going to open our doors to you. Dr. Chapman, welcome.
Well, thank you. It's great to be with you today discussing a topic, as you just said, I think is extremely important in marriage relationships, as well as parent-child relationships, for that matter.
Yeah, no, The Love Languages has been such a huge hit and even more valuable today in our device-obsessed world. We've been asked by a lot of people whether or not our love languages shift or change over time, Dr. Chapman, or if our preferred love language is inherent like the Myers-Briggs types we all have. Could you speak to this for us?
Yeah, I think the love language, like many personality traits, tends to stay with us for a lifetime. Now, having said that, I think there may be seasons of life or circumstances in which another love language might seem to jump to the top for a moment or for a period of time. For example, if a mother has 3 preschool children, acts of service may not be her primary love language, but I can tell you during those years, her husband pitches in and helps her, it's going to speak loudly to her. So it may seem that that love language changes it for a few years there. Or let's say that one of you receives word that a family member has died. Physical touch may not be the love language of your spouse, but I can tell you when they receive that message, if you simply hold them and let them cry in your arms, that may be the most powerful thing you could do at the moment. So I think there may be exceptions, but I do think that basically the love language tends to stay with us for a lifetime, and it's developed very early. By the time a child is 4 years old, you can determine their love language rather easily, simply by observing their behavior. You know, my son's love language, for example, is physical touch. When he was that age, I would come home in the afternoon. He would run to the door, grab my leg, and climb on me. He's touching me because he wants to be touched.
I love
Our daughter never did that. Our daughter would say, Daddy, come into my room, I want to show you something. Her love language was quality time. She wanted my undivided attention. So I think it's there very early, and it tends to stay with us for a lifetime.
That is wonderful. So can we then develop or, understand and develop all of the love languages in order to adapt to another's preferred love language? And if so, how can we do that?
Well, I think that's the good news. Any one of these 5 can be learned as an adult, even if you did not receive them as a child and you did not learn them as a child. And it's like learning any other language. Yes, it'll be difficult. For example, I've had fathers, husbands say to me, well, my wife's love language is words of affirmation, but I didn't grow up receiving words of affirmation, and it just doesn't seem natural to me. So I say, okay, so get you a little notebook, write down sentences that you hear other men say to their wives, or maybe you read it in a book, write them down, stand in front of the mirror, read them out loud to yourself so you hear yourself saying these words, and then one day walk in, and when she's looking in the other direction, you just say one of them and run.
And run?
And run.
I love it.
And you've broken the silence. And the second time is easier, and the third time is easier. So it's like learning any language. It's difficult. You have to put effort into it, but you can learn to speak any of these languages and thus speak the primary love language of your spouse or your child so that they feel love, because you know in your heart you love them, but we want them to feel love. We want to meet that emotional need for love.
So you can develop fluency across all 5 languages, love languages.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I say to some people sometimes, my wife's language is acts of service, and I say I vacuum the floors for her. Now, do you think that vacuuming floors comes natural for me? No. But I do it, not because I enjoy vacuuming, but because I know it makes her feel loved. So you have to determine that you're going to learn the love language, and then you choose to do it.
Boy, I feel really great because Poppy's smiling at me right now, Dr. Chapman, because I'm in the same boat with you, my man. I'm not a great vacuumer, but I do it all the time, mop the floors, clean, because that's the same language for my wife, Poppy.
We both have acts of service as our love language. What's yours, Dr. Chapman, if we may ask?
Mine's words of affirmation.
Okay, so we're going to heap praise upon
Do we tell you
praise.
how fabulous you are, by the way?
Yes. Actually, before we started the recording, we did.
And you tell me if this is true in your experience. If you have the same love language, which let's say acts of service, typically you'll have different dialects within that language.
Yes.
That is, the things that you want Jeff to do for you may be differently from the things that he wants you to do for him. So there's different dialects. Like yours might be vacuuming or mopping or whatever you want him to do, but his may be, you're cooking his favorite
I make
meal.
lunch. I make lunch and breakfast.
You make lunch. There
yes.
you go. Okay.
There we go. So I like that, the dialects. You've explained something that we weren't
that was a
sure
question
about.
we were going to be asking about too. But we want to ask about something else here. In, of course, your book, The 5 Love Languages, The Secret to Love That Lasts, which we also love that second part of it. You describe the emotional love tank. And if a couple marries still in the infatuation phase, and it's revealed later on that one spouse already came with a near empty love tank, what can the other do? Is knowing or speaking and acting on the spouse's love language enough to fill that tank?
It's an interesting question. There are people, of course, who grew up not feeling loved by their parents. That is, they grew up with what I'm calling and what you referred to as an empty love tank. And during the in-love experience, they do feel loved. I mean, they're in this euphoric state, but that only has a lifespan of about 2 years, some a little longer, some a little less, and we come down off that state. And this is when we have to intentionally learn to love each other. And a person who did not feel love growing up, if you ask them their love language, they may have no clue at all as to what would make them feel loved, because they're not quite sure what it feels like, except for that euphoric state. So what I say is to be open and honest with each other about your past and whether you felt loved or didn't feel loved growing up. And then, yes, you can take the quiz and you can talk about what your love language might be, but let's just do some trial and error. And so just one by one, maybe for 1 week you focus on words of affirmation, and next week you focus on acts of service. And let's just see if there's anything inside of you that responds more powerfully to what the other person is doing. And if so, then you've discovered your primary love language. And speaking the primary love language helps you understand, yes, that's what makes me feel loved. Now, it's always good, of course, to sprinkle in the other 4, because we want to learn how to receive love and give love in all 5 love languages. In fact, I say to parents, give heavy doses of the primary to your child, but sprinkle in the other 4 so that they learn there are different ways to receive love. There are different ways to give love. That's the healthiest adult who learned how to receive and give love in all 5 love languages. But most of us didn't receive all 5. So we have to learn this relationship tool as adults.
Okay.
Wonderful. This is so helpful to all of our listeners. And, talking about love tanks, which we love that description, that metaphor.
Yeah. Is it possible for a partner to have a healthy love relationship with someone who has never attended to that empty tank? Isn't it a responsibility of the empty tank person to be willing to be open to love and fill their own tank?
Well, I don't know that we can fill our own tank, but I do think we have to be open to love. And I think most people are. It's only those who were deprived of love or those who were abused as children that may have difficulty believing in their heart that anyone could love them, because they weren't loved growing up. In fact, they were abused growing up. And so I think those are the people who may have more difficulty opening up their heart to the possibility that they could be loved. Because all the people they related to growing up, let's say, for example, they lived not only in that broken home, but maybe they lived in an abusive home, or maybe they lived with foster parents and, just different settings. And so consequently, the people that they tried to trust as children always betrayed them. And so they will have difficulty believing that somebody could really love them. But, opening up and talking about that is the road to healing for that person. And sometimes it may take some counseling for them just to come to understand, okay, this is my history, this is what I grew up in, but now I'm an adult, and let me learn the skills that are necessary to have good relationships.
I'm sure that also holds true for like abandonment issues and
attachment issues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's wonderful. Dr. Chapman, we are relationship counselors, and we always say we always strive for heart-healthy communication. However, we can draw on other resources like your wonderful love languages to achieve that goal. We also have a Myers-Briggs certification, and we often combine the Myers-Briggs preference types with your wonderful love languages. So let's say somebody has a very clear preference for introversion and perceiving. That's a person who receives their energy from the inside, and they need a good amount of time to make decisions. What can that spouse do who's looking for a quick turnaround in the manner of words of affirmation or acts of service to deal with someone like that who is hesitant and reluctant to come forward to express their feelings and thoughts? What if their love language it produces more frustration?
Well, I think what we have to recognize is that all of us are different. We are human, and humans are unique. And yes, it will be frustrating. If you grew up, and your personality is one type and their personality is another type, then yeah, you're going to be frustrated or annoyed by their responses. For example, if your spouse doesn't respond to a question immediately, you're wondering, well, why do you have to think about that? I mean, don't you know? Well, no, they don't know. They have to think about it. And so I sometimes talk about dead seas and babbling brooks. The Dead Sea is the one we're describing here, that they can receive things throughout the day, and they have a large reservoir where they store all of that, and they're perfectly happy not to talk. And if you ask them a question, they have to think about what they want to say in response to that, But the babbling brook, whatever comes in the eye gate or the ear gate comes out the mouth gate, and there's hardly 60 seconds between,
Right.
And they marry each other. So yes, they will be frustrated with each other. But the good news is this: the babbling brook can learn how to say more than they would normally say, and they can learn how to maybe think a bit faster. And then the babbling brook can learn to slow the flow. Leave a little silence after your questions, and don't be annoyed by that. It's just honoring the uniqueness of your spouse. And that's a required element in any healthy relationship. We have to honor the differences that we have. And sometimes they can be an asset to us as well. That's what we're working for, is to make our differences an asset. So, yeah, I think any couple with personality differences can learn, because that's what you guys are doing. They can learn communication skills. And I like to say we're influenced by our personality, but we're not controlled by our personality.
Yes.
So any couple can learn to have good communication.
We definitely agree exactly with what you said. In your book, The 5 Love Languages, you described a client who asked you if it were possible to love someone that you hate. You shared your experience in the beginning stages of your own marriage, where resentment and condemnation began to kind of trickle in. And you wrote, quote, "We both knew it was the choice to love." And both Jeff and I sort of sat back in this aha moment that we had, this epiphany, and we said, wow, that's such a powerful statement. Can you walk us through how you and your spouse arrived at that same wonderful awareness? Because I think that's what so many of the people that we reach and talk with often share with us, that they don't know what steps to take to get to that final win-win goal.
Well, I think that's where the 5 love languages can be very, very helpful. Because if you know your spouse's love language, then speaking it is a choice. And I said to a man one day who said to me, he said, my wife's love language is acts of service. But I'll tell you and her, if it's going to take my washing dishes and my vacuuming floors for her to feel loved, she can forget that. And I said to him, that's your choice. I much prefer to live with a wife who has a full love tank. If it's vacuuming floors and washing dishes, I say, give me the vacuum. It's a small price to live with a happy woman.
Mm-hmm.
So love is a choice, and that's what we came to recognize, because we were very, very different, and we did end up, after we came down off the high of the in-love experience, of saying harsh things to each other, condemning things to each other, and we got to where we didn't really like each other. But love, again, is a choice. And if I had known the love languages in those days, I could have chosen to speak her love language. But unfortunately for us, we didn't know the concept in those early days of our marriage. But I tell you what turned it around for me. When I finally said to God, I don't know what else to do. I've tried everything I know. It's just not working. It's not getting any better. And I don't know what to do. And as soon as I said that, there came to my mind a visual image of Jesus on his knees washing the feet of his disciples.
Yep.
And I heard in my heart God say to me, that's the problem in your marriage. You do not have the attitude of Christ toward your wife. It hit me like a ton of bricks, because I knew I didn't have that attitude. My attitude was, look, woman, I know how to have a good marriage. If you'll listen to me, we'll have one.
Mm-hmm.
I blamed her. But that day I got a different message, and I said, Lord, forgive me, because I was in seminary studying to be a pastor. I said, forgive me, with all my study in Greek and Hebrew and theology, I've missed the whole point. And then I said, please give me the attitude of Christ toward her. And God changed my heart and gave me a desire to try to find out how to serve her. And so I started asking her 3 questions that really changed our marriage. 1, honey, what could I do to help you? Question number 2, how could I make your life easier? Question number 3, how could I be a better husband to you? And she, of course, was willing to answer me. And when I responded to her answers, she began to change in her attitude. Not overnight, but within 3 months, she started asking me those 3 questions. And looking back on it, actually, she was teaching me her love language, even though I didn't even know the concept. But her answers were telling me what would make her feel loved. And when I responded positively, she began to feel loved. And then she began to reach out to me, because love stimulates love.
Mm-hmm.
The scriptures say we love God because God first loved us. The same principle is true in human relationships. Somebody has to choose to love. And when you do, it touches something inside the other person, and they're very likely to reciprocate. So that's what happened in our relationship.
You've already kind of started on a path of a topic we wanted to get into about how much faith plays into relationships. We have a deep faith, and it's clearly a big part of our lives, but we're working with a young couple who are very sweet and in love, been there for 3 years, but the only area of a huge disconnect they have is with religion. She has strong faith, but he has none. And they've stopped discussing this topic because they're also conflict avoiders, and they don't want to really step on each other's toes. But how can love languages address this religious elephant in the sanctuary, if you will?
Well, I think what we have to do in a situation where we don't have the same views in terms of the spiritual part of life, we have to respect the other person. I remember once that in a seminar, I was teaching couples how to pray together silently. Hold hands, close your eyes, pray silently. And when you get through, you say amen out loud, so they'll know you're through, and you hang onto their hand until they say amen. And I said, it's a simple way to begin praying together. And a lady came up to me afterwards, and she said, I don't think I can do that praying thing. And I said, why? She said, because my husband's a Christian, and I'm a witch, and I don't believe in God. And she said, so how can I pray silently when I don't believe in God? And I said, well, what if you simply respect his view on God? And out of respect, you hold his hand and close your eyes while he prays. You don't have to pray, but you respect his belief in God. And she thought a minute, and she said, I can do that. So, we have to start where we are. And we all know we can't convert somebody. We
Right.
can't make them be a follower of Christ, But we can demonstrate love and respect for them as a human. And when we do, we're demonstrating the Spirit of Christ. And our behavior may well eventually bring them to where they put their faith in Christ. So I think we have to respect the other person's position where they are. And obviously we're praying for them and we're trying to demonstrate to them the difference that Christ makes in our lives. So to me, that's the way you handle that situation. Obviously, it's much easier if both of you explore the spiritual foundation before you get married to find out if what you believe in.
Of course, yes.
But I think if we find ourselves there, that to me, that's the way you handle it.
I love that. I like that holding hands with someone just for her. And I think that's really nice. Unwittingly, many of us often make missteps in our relationships, of course. And you co-authored a wonderful book with Jennifer Thomas, When Sorry Isn't Enough. And your quiz to determine our apology language, which we love, the how of our apologies is essential to the well-being of all of our relationships. Are there any tips to determine if someone's apology language, someone else's apology language, if that person will not take your brilliant quiz? In other words, if I'm a person who prefers restitution over requesting forgiveness, but the person with whom there is a conflict doesn't have the same apology language, what can I do to genuinely reach that person?
This whole area is a very interesting area. You mentioned the book that I wrote with Dr. Jennifer Thomas. She came to me with that idea. She said, Gary, I've been using the 5 love languages with my counselees for years. She said, but I believe people have different apology languages. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, I think that what one person considers to be an apology is not what another person considers to be an apology. Mm-hmm. So I think couples are missing each other, when they try to apologize. He says, I'm sorry. And she's thinking, well, you certainly are. She's not getting it. And so we actually asked thousands of people all over the country 2 questions. When you apologize, what do you typically say or do? Second question, when someone apologizes to you, what do you want to hear them say or do? And their answers fell into 5 categories. And I promise you, we weren't looking for 5, okay? I like 5. And we call them the 5 apology languages, or the 5 languages of apology. And so what we're trying to do there is to help people understand that you were taught as a child how to apologize. And that's the way you apologize. But your spouse may have had a different parent, and they may have learned a different way to apologize. So you're saying, I'm sorry, and they're not thinking that's an apology. They're waiting for you to say, I was wrong, I shouldn't have done that. Or they're waiting for you to say, the one you mentioned, making restitution, what can I do to make this right? And it never crossed your mind to say that. What can I do to make this right? And so if you understand that we have different ideas about what a sincere apology looks like, then you can share that with each other, and you can learn to apologize in a way that's meaningful to the other person. Because what we're asking in the back of our mind when someone's apologizing is, are they sincere? Because if they're sincere, we can forgive them. If we think they're just trying to whitewash it, it's harder to forgive. So if you understand there are different ways of apologizing, you discuss it with each other, and look back on your childhood and say, what were you taught as a child? That's one of the best ways. What were you taught as a child on how to apologize? Because what they say is likely what they consider to be a sincere apology. And then say, well, my parents taught me this. And now you've realized we've got 2 different ways of apologizing. So let's learn how to apologize in a way that's meaningful to the other person and make it as easy as we can for them to forgive us. So it's a key insight, very similar to the love languages, but it's processing our failures. And all of us fail from time to time. You don't have to be perfect to have a good marriage, but you do have to deal effectively with your failures. And learning how to apologize to each other and then forgiving each other is essential if you're going to have a long-term healthy marriage.
And so often, especially when you mentioned children, it made me think of teenagers. Between us, we have 5 children. They're adults now. But when they were teenagers, we certainly heard that sorry, that kind of with a sort of sassy inflection to it. So that probably wouldn't go along with anything. And that speaks to the sincerity of which you spoke. I think I taught my 4 children restitution. Is an apology language something that can be taught? Because I would make my children follow through with not just an apology, but an act of restitution, making something better the next time, really following through with that. It wasn't enough just to say, I'm sorry, because restitution is my primary apology language.
I think as parents, we do teach our children to apologize. We all have some idea of what apology sounds like, and probably because we were taught that by our parents. So yes, I think how we apologize is typically learned from our parents. Now, we did find that about 10% of the population almost never apologizes for anything, and most of them are men, and they were taught by their fathers, real men don't apologize.
Right.
Ooh, there's a great thing.
Right.
And you know where they got that?
Right.
John Wayne, that great theologian. Okay? Real men don't apologize. And I say to the men, John Wayne was wrong. Real men do apologize. In fact, if you want to have a healthy marriage, you have to learn to apologize for one simple reason. You will never be perfect.
Right.
And so you've got to learn how to apologize. So yes, I think it's learned as a child by most of us. But even if you didn't learn to apologize, or you were taught not to apologize as a child, you can learn how to apologize as an adult, and it's an essential skill in having a healthy relationship.
One of the things we've often seen, too, in our counseling that's always a challenging scenario, but what if only one of the partner is willing to really work on things and the other thinks everything's okay and isn't really willing to put forth any effort? What do you talk about when you hear that scenario?
Well, obviously you can't make your spouse change, but you can influence your spouse. In fact, we influence each other every single day. Simple. You walk into the house, you go greet your wife or husband, give them a kiss, ask how their day went, ask what can I do to help you this evening. You have had a positive influence on them. Another scenario, you walk in the house at the end of the day, you don't go greet your spouse. You don't give them a hug. You don't even acknowledge them. You go get you something to drink. You turn on your computer or go to the TV and unwind. You have just influenced your spouse in a negative way. You've just communicated, you're not important in my life. So every single day we influence each other. So if only you are the one who wants to work on the marriage and they express no interest, you can influence them by your own behavior. And this is where speaking their love language and dealing with your own failures in the past and being willing to admit and ask forgiveness for your failures, and then seeking to speak their love language consistently over a period of time, no matter how they treat you, chances are you will begin to influence them in a positive way, and they will be drawn to you and start asking you, well, what can I do to help you? Or how can I do something for you? Now they're reaching out to you, and you can teach them how to express their love to you. So it doesn't mean that that person will ultimately do that, because, listen, God reaches out to us every day, and people still spit in God's face and walk away. So you can't make your spouse respond, but that's the most positive influence you can have on them. And if they don't turn around, you can look yourself in the mirror and look God in the face and know that you gave it your best shot. And, if they choose to walk away, then you can't keep them from doing that.
And that's such a poignant point that you made there, Dr. Chapman. Is there a time where, if the other person won't walk away, is there a time where someone else, the party that has tried everything, has looked, has done all the love languages, have done counseling, is there a point at which that person says, okay, I think I have to step out of this relationship?
I think there's certainly a place for tough love. And tough love says, I love you too much to sit here and do nothing. I've done everything I can to try to help you engage with me in this relationship. And you continue in behavior that's hurting me and hurting the children, if you have children. And I love you too much to do nothing. So I'm going to, and then you decide what you're going to do, move in with my mother or whatever. If you're willing and you go for counseling and you get help with the problem, then I'm not going to abandon you. I'm willing to work on our marriage, but I love you too much to sit here and do nothing. And so you take that tough love step. And sometimes it's the tough love step that causes them to realize wow, I'm about to lose something here that I
Right.
think is important. Yeah, and especially like with alcoholics, many times they don't go for help until they're pushed and realize they're about to lose something. And many times they will go. And obviously sometimes they don't. But you try tender love first, and then you apply tough love. Sometimes we apply the tough love after we've been condemning them for months, and criticizing them for months. And then we try the tough love, and then they say, good riddance.
Mm-hmm.
They're tired of all your condemnation. That's why tender love is important for a long period of time before you take the tough love approach. It's more likely to be effective if it's following on the heels of tender love.
Love that.
I'm curious, did you ever see the movie Hope Springs?
I did not.
The reason we bring it up, it kind of goes to this topic. Meryl Streep and Tommy Lee Jones, a stale marriage that she wants to fix, and he didn't want to do anything. And she does exactly that, goes from the tender to tough, and he eventually follows in and they get the help and make the marriage really wonderful again. And it's an interesting movie. I would strongly suggest you take a peek at it sometime.
Yeah. And Dr. Chapman, what we found so remarkable about it is that we really went to see it for research mostly. But what we found interesting is that when we left the movie theater, so many people, and you've got two blockbuster stars, Streep and Tommy Lee Jones, and Meryl Streep performs, acts out a very subservient, disempowered woman, which is hard to believe. But anyway, she was very good at it. And I think it made people so uncomfortable and to look at their own relationships that the movie did not get good reviews. It was not well turned out at the box office. And it makes us wonder, how do you get people to take that baby step to open up, to look inside their own love tanks, their emotional tanks? What's a first step that someone could do? If they're listening to us right now, what would you suggest?
I would say if you're in that kind of relationship, you would say to them, in your own words, of course, I don't know how you feel about our relationship, but I'm disappointed in it. And I don't know if you're willing to work with me to try to make it better, but I'm not willing to sit here and do nothing. At least you're putting it on the table.
Yes.
So that they now know something's going on inside of you. And that's okay. Give them a day or two to think about it. And maybe they'll come back and say, okay, let's do something. But if not, then you take the approach we've been talking about. And you say, well, I'm going to do something. And then you start treating them differently. And then they begin to realize, wow, I don't know what she's reading or he's reading, but what they're doing, but I like this, And so they begin to warm up. So to me, that you got to put it on the table first, where you are in the relationship, and then invite them to do something with you, like read a book together or go to a marriage conference together or go for counseling together. But if they don't engage in that, then you take what you're getting in your counseling or in your book reading, and you begin to practice that toward them and see if in due time they might open up to you.
Sure.
Now, obviously, if there's physical abuse or sexual abuse of children, that sort of thing, you don't sit around waiting to try this. You don't tolerate that. You have to take tough love when that kind of thing is going on.
Right. Oh, we have two more questions. The first one is, what's your advice to parents wanting to improve communication with their teenagers?
I think, first of all, making sure you know the teenager's love language is important. You can get them to go online, 5lovelanguages.com, and take the teenage quiz, which will help them determine their love language. Obviously, there's one also there for adults. But that's an important part of it, because I know you love the teenager, but the question is, does the teenager feel loved? So discovering their love language is important, and start speaking it on a regular basis. When the teenager feels loved, they're far more likely to be open to your instruction, to the rules that you make, to the consequences of breaking those rules. This is not the only thing, but this is a huge thing in terms of relating to teens in a positive way, is to make sure that their love tank is full by speaking their primary love language. And the 5 love languages of teenagers is written to parents, helping them navigate these waters. I have another version of that written to the teenager. It's called A Teen's Guide to the 5 Love Languages. If the parents can read their book and the teen can read theirs and discuss it, it can be the beginning of a whole new relationship between the parent and the teenager.
I love that. A great new dynamic. Okay, and then the last one we were thinking about is we work a lot. We call ourselves millennial translators. We work with a lot of organizations in the workplace that have multi-generational workspaces. And we want to know, how can we apply the love languages in a workplace?
Well, I think in the workplace we wouldn't normally call it love language. I wrote a book with Dr. Paul White called The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace.
Yes.
And essentially, we're taking the love languages to work.
Sure.
But we're calling it appreciation because the work relationship is a bit different from a family relationship. But it's the same emotional need, appreciation. It's the need to sense that the people that I work with and work for care about me as a person, not look at me simply as a machine to get a job done. And when you feel appreciated in the workplace, you tend to stay there and you tend to do your best. When you don't feel appreciated, you tend to begin looking for another job. And a lot of the turnover going from one job to another job is because we didn't feel appreciated. So we're hoping that that book, The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, is going to help a lot of managers and supervisors realize, wait a minute, maybe we can create a more positive work climate here, and maybe we can retain our people more, which has a good bottom line to that, because when you have to train somebody new every 3 months, it's expensive.
Oh, sure.
So we're hoping that's going to create a more positive work environment for people.
We've been researching for years about workplace environments and the emotional connection with that. And in one of the many places that we pulled was a good friend of ours that has $1 billion industry, 700 employees. And when we were waiting to meet with him, we sat with the receptionist, the first face you see at the door. And we asked the question that we ask everybody: what's the most important aspect of your job here that you appreciate? And she turned and she said, without equivocation, she said, I feel valued. And she was just answering phones. And it was just such a powerful statement that she said. And she had been there for many, many, many years. So no matter if she's the VP of operations or the receptionist at the desk, she feels valued.
We wish that could be true for every person who has a job. And it can be if we take initiative to learn how to communicate appreciation to people with whom we work.
All right, Dr. Chapman, tell our listeners how they can find you again. I know 5lovelanguages.com. If they want to take your quiz, is it free?
It is. The quiz is free. Information there on all of my books, information on where I do marriage seminars across the country, some study guides for some of my books if you want to use them in small groups. A lot of stuff available at 5lovelanguages.com. The number 5lovelanguages.com.
Well, we can't thank you enough, and I especially thank you, speaking for all the men in the world. I always make a lot of fun of the guys who were often emotionally bankrupt and don't know how to speak to these things. And I often make a big point to all the men we speak with that this is so critical that you understand this. And one of my favorite topics is discussing your love languages. So we appreciate your work, your effort, and, of course, the time you spent with us today in this interview. And
our audience is appreciating you, too, Dr. Chapman. Thank you so very much. And any last words you want to share?
No, I think I would just reiterate the 2 essentials to long-term healthy marriage. One is make sure you're speaking each other's love language. Keep emotional love alive. And secondly, deal effectively with your failures. You do those 2 things, you're on the right road to a long-term healthy marriage.
You're awesome. Well, this is Poppy and Jeff Spencer with the Relationship Restaurant. Our website and podcast could be found at poppyandjeff.com. That's poppyandgeoff.com. And you will find a recording of this podcast there as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Chapman. We appreciate your wonderful contributions and love languages, and thanks for sharing.
Well, thank you. It was good to be with you, Poppy and Jeff. Keep up the good work.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman. Bye-bye.
See you.